Welcome to Limitless Faith Podcast. Today we have a gentleman joining us for the very first time, and we want to welcome him, Mr. Daniel Watts. Welcome. How you feeling today?
A little nervous, but I'm here and I'm excited. You know,
Well, I
gotta
am
kind of let
very,
things go a bit.
yes. And so, one of the things about you, Daniel, I really admire you and your journey and just where God is taking you. So, I just wanted to have you on to just share your testimony and to impact these lives, people who are going through the same thing. So just tell us a little bit about what was your childhood like?
My childhood was very interesting, I should say. I the I grew up. My mom, she had 4 kids before she was 21. So we had a household pretty equipped. We all took care of each other sometimes, but you know, uh, we've always been in tune with our religious and spiritual side of things. So that helped out a lot. I was the quiet one more closed in, observant and things like that. But uh, it was interesting, because the places I grew up in, in the hood with all the different violence and obviously it's a lot of things, that us, as a nationality that we deal with within our own communities. So I dealt with a lot of those things, and but it was something in me that always wanted, better. I knew it was more to life than just what was actually in front of me. So I did a lot of reading. I tried to build relationships outside of the community and stuff, just so that I could step out of that element, and not grow too familiar with it. But I did. There was a lot of like backsliding and some things you just couldn't help to get away from. But one of the most troubled moments was with my dad passing away at such a young age. Not really having that father figure or having someone there that I could go to really like get advice or to like idolize in a sense. Somebody that I could really relate to. So I was constantly seeking, through books and through media. Well, at that time, it wasn't much media, so it was mainly like books and like mentors and things of that nature. But I made it through it. I feel like I was on a right path. I was just exposed to a lot of things that I wish I wasn't exposed to. But it was fun, interesting, hard, and so many other things. So I could really dig deep into it, but I don't want to start like getting too emotional. But
No, you're good. So you talked about being, down the right path and having this outlook on life, this inspiration. So what was the roadblock? What stood in the way of that?
for my childhood, I just think it was the lack of exposure, 100%, or that I had the right connections with the right people. And, you know, um, I had a big heart. So, even when I was exposed to certain things and, and felt that it was the right thing and I wanted to share it with other people and, family in particular, and the people closest to me. But, their minds were a lot smaller than mine. And, some things just I end up sharing away from because I was so easily influenced. I'll try to share some of these brighter ideas, some of the brighter things in life, and why education was important and how we should do more, interacting with people that have what we want and stuff like that. But no one really wants to hear that. or at least that was in my circle at the time. But I think my heart and my love for the people closest to me, even though they weren't on the right path, I wanted to help them. And I spent so much time trying to help and build them up. And a lot of the time it would take and pull me away from what I was really trying to get to. And I wasn't selfish enough to really just like say, okay, figure it out, but that was definitely a roadblock. And then uh, just a constant just moving and going to different places and things like that. That kind of roadblock because I would develop relationships with certain people, and then we would move, so that relationship would be broken and that connection wouldn't be there anymore. So I have to restart all over again. That for the mass part of it, that was pretty much it. Just just with me caring so much about other people and not really focusing on what I really wanted. I think that was the biggest roadblock for me.
So, talk a little bit about your life post high school. I know that you experienced something that was like kind of a wake up call for you. So, what was that like? What led up to that wake up call, and what kind of lifestyle were you living
Um, After high school,
after high school?
okay, okay. Well, after high school, I think I was on a bit of a high horse. You know, I was actually battling going from actually going into the military or going to college, and then I obtained a scholarship. So I wasn't going to turn it down. At least I didn't feel like it was the right thing to do, even though I took the ASVAB, did pretty well on it and stuff, and they were pressuring me into going to the Navy in particular. But yeah, I didn't choose that path. I chose college, and I played football there at Southwestern Oklahoma, and things were going pretty well for me. But one of the things that I battled to, which I think that you were trying to bring to the light, was I also had relationships with certain families and stuff like that that were gang affiliated and stuff like that, and I was kind of in and out of that lifestyle, and I wasn't sure if that's what I really wanted, but I had grown up in it and I'd already been associated with it. So with my family being from gangs and with the people that I loved and cared about and had developed great relationships, that was what they were a part of. So at the time, I felt as if that's what my life consists of. Like, I can be a part of this, and I can still be great, and maybe in some form that I could change things and change the narrative of what it was like. But I didn't realize how crazy it was, you know. Well, yeah, I went back home. It was fall break, which is uh that just let us go back home for a few days, and chose to go back and go right back into some of the things that that I'm turning away from. And I ended up going with two guys, and a crime was committed, and I ended up, and just a scary moment for me, just to kind of ask for just a little bit into it. I ended up receiving 35 years in a state penitentiary for the crime that was committed. And although, you know, the other guy ended up getting off, it wasn't my thing or whatever, it was actually my vehicle that was there. and I was the oldest, so they ended up putting those charges completely on me, and the fact that I acted as if I was oblivious or didn't know anything about what was going on. It just made them want to give me more time than what was, appropriate. That I felt like with everything that I had going on in my life, not ever having a juvenile record or you know barely even traffic tickets or anything. I wasn't a bad person. I was just thinking that perhaps they would be lenient and whatever was to come that would come, but I would not speak on it. And and a part of me thought that maybe, the person that actually had committed the crime would have stood up, in the midst of it and said, "Look, I did this. I'm not gonna ruin his life," but that didn't happen. So I went down that path. It started out with 35, but after some work through my incarceration, I ended up getting it down to a 10 in and 5 out. And man, the story is long. I'm trying to like figure out how to break it down into smaller portions. But I ended up getting a sentence modification, which knocked it down to a 10 in and 5 out. And originally, they didn't even process that. So even though I was still incarcerated, I, it was still as if I still had the 35 years. It wasn't until closer towards me getting out where they actually processed the paperwork, which could maybe have been legal, but um, they went ahead and processed the 10, but they didn't process the 5 because for whatever reason, I just look at it as a blessing from God because upon release, I was just excited, like, oh, no paper, no nothing. It was like, you're free. So, yeah, that was amazing.
That is amazing. That's how God works. So I think it's crazy how we all have lived a similar lifestyle to where we know the right thing to do and we want to do the right thing, but we still have ties to the past or, the wrong friends in our lives or whatever the case is. And so it kind of detours our lives. But for you, you have this amazing testimony because of it. And so while you were incarcerated, what would you say the turning point in your life was that actually got you back on the right track?
Well, going into incarceration, going into me being in there, like the first few years were hard. They sent me to one of the worst yards or penitentiaries in the state, and there was a lot of killings, a lot of fighting, a lot of lockdowns, a lot of suffocation and frustration, built up testosterone. But um, there was there's a lot going on. I was angry. I had a lot of hate in my heart. You know, I was at a point to where I really didn't know what to think. I was young. I was 19. I was 19 when the case actually took place, and then I fought it for almost 2 years, and then it just led up to me being in penitentiary. And the fact that I couldn't even turn 21 as a free man, and all these different dreams, all the things that I look forward into doing, the threshold just blew me. Like I couldn't function really in my mind of everything that was going on. Did a lot of fighting, you know, more so just to demand respect. I didn't never wanted to be taken advantage of. I never wanted nobody to look down on me, or feel like I was soft or anything like that because I seen a lot, and a lot of people that go in there with, with this mindset, you know, something. I was not that person that just thought that, I was the biggest, baddest person or anything like that. But I knew that there were people in there that were probably never getting out. That just whichever way they could, whatever they could do to come up, if it was taking advantage of a person or whatever, they would try it. And as soon as you let yourself go into that form, it's hard to climb out of. I would never be that person. So So my back was against the wall. A lot of times I was given some advice by one of my uncles, Uncle Robert, and tells me he's like basically if there's anything you know you may be dealing with, like don't hold it in, like let it out, let it go. Address any issues or problems, as they come about. And the way I took it is, person looks at me the wrong way, I'm saying something. If a person bumps me, I got a problem. So it was just, I had this real like hard shell on, and it wasn't like I was trying to intimidate nothing. I just wanted I wasn't that person. And if you felt like I was, like, I felt obligated to show you who I was. And I lived in that dark cloud for a long time. Uh, it wasn't until I say closer to 4 to 5 years in, uh, I came across, a good friend, which is a lifelong friend now. This was Curry, and he gave me some advice. Uh, Even though it wasn't quite the right path at the time, but he told me, like, man, because I had started gang banging and just really in it. So he kind of sat me down and told me, look, know, you can't do this. You know what I mean? You're not where you want to be. You're not ever going to get there if you don't, you have to quit fighting, start hustling, make you something, start preparing yourself for your release. You don't have a life sentence. You're not going to be in here like the rest of these people. You know what I'm saying? And you have a brilliant mind, but you just feel the need to always, you know, feel like you have something to prove to a person, whether it be in a negative or positive manner. But, he took me and introduced me more so into focusing on like grind, like, you know, in this case it was hustling and actually building up and studying and stuff like that. Just really getting in touch with myself. And I took that advice and I really started working on myself. And so a lot of times this is when I started placing myself into isolation and started doing a lot of reading, research, studying different religions, psychology, sociology, all kinds of stuff. So I would just became this person that was just hungry for information. I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do with it, but it definitely kept me out of the way and out of my old ways. So started going through that process, and then things started to open up for me because I wasn't as active, as far as in the yards and stuff like that. So different. I started meeting new people. I started building different kinds of relationships, outside of, the gang scene and stuff like that. And just having those conversations and stuff, I really started to figure out that, or people started to tell me, that, oh, you have these kind of qualities and these type of things. Like you should really like get in touch with that, like get in touch with that side of yourself. So I started to like mirror myself and look at myself and try to see what attributes they were seeing and why they seen them, and what could I do to make that, that part of me showcase more. So I continued to stay on that path to educate and myself. And then I'll say there was a turning point. I met a guy and he was very spiritual and stuff like that. And when I uh, when I met him, took me wanted me to go to church and do these different things, and I'm like, okay, I'm open for that. Like at this point, I feel like I really need Jesus, or something. But I took his advice and went there, and like part of me was just like, man, this feels like life. It feels relieving. Like I've been, and I had transferred from that yard. I went to a different facility, and and when I got there, that's when this path started to happen. And I'm like, every time I would go into that setting, like everyone would be humble, everybody would just be seem like full of life. Like there wasn't any judging, wasn't anything. So there was just like, and this is a great element, this is a great element. Regardless of what his preference was, it's just like, man, you can just feel the energy in here, and it's just alive. And I felt like in those moments, I felt like I didn't want to leave. Like me going back into the cells, or going back and having to deal with these different guards and stuff like that. It's just like, man, I just want to go to church. Like, get me back there. So that's when I started praying, and I actually started. We actually had these things, which we called soaps, which were sort of like devotions and stuff like that. And it was homework that the minister would give us and stuff. So I would do that and just read, and I would pray, and I'll try to teach other people, and we'll have debates and stuff like that. And at that point, I was just like, man, this feels good. It feels a lot better than what I had been doing, and I didn't really receive any wrath, from people, or when I start talking about, the Bible or the Word and stuff like that. A lot of people that were that weren't like receptive to it, they would kind of shy away, and and it kind of worked for me, because I'm like, well, if you don't want to hear it, this is what I'm on. But I went through that, and then although I was going through this, you know, uh, spiritual side of myself, I've really never quit hustling. So when I say hustling, I mean like doing illegal things and stuff like that to be able to obtain money, stuff that I wasn't supposed to be doing. But I ended up, man, God is he's so good, because in that moment He was giving me every single thing that I wanted. Like, made sure I was fed, I was clothed, I was get fresh air, I wasn't caged in. I could do anything. I did not need to hustle. I did not need to do anything. Like, I could have been comfortable in that state and finished out the duration of my time. But I was greedy, and I wanted more, and I wanted more. So I wouldn't let go. And I got to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm not gonna hustle anymore. I'm not gonna do that. I'm really about to focus. And in that moment of me changing, going into that, I ended up. I was on my way to work. I worked at in an administrative setting for cleaning like offices and stuff. So and I'm just thinking like, okay, I'm not gonna be doing anything else. I'm just gonna focus in this. And then they get a call to bring me back to central control. So remind you, I haven't did anything. I've changed. I haven't did nothing, but they bring me back, and they tell them to take me back behind the back end, or put me in this box or whatever. Now I'm so confused. Like, what is going on? What have I done? And it's just like, well, we having a new unit manager come in. Some things are changing. We're doing like checks and stuff. And at this point, you have too many points, security points, to be at this facility. So I had received uh, a write up. It had been 5 months since the write up. So I knew my points was excessive, but it had been 5 months that passed by. Me being in no trouble, changing, trying to get rocky. And it was just, yeah, we understand it was 5 months ago. But at this point, we have to do this audit, and you have to go back to, at this time it was law. So I'm like, I feel like I'm going backwards. So I don't know why. That's the first time I cried in prison. I sat in there, and I just started crying. I'm just like, man, as soon as I choose to change and I get introduced to these people and everything is feeling good, like I want to make things happen. I go backwards. Like, what is it? I did not understand it, but um, it happened. They sent me back, and I just all the rage, everything just came back. I just didn't know what to think. I'm just like, I'm so mad. I'm so upset. I did not want to go back in this cage. I did not want this to happen, but it did. So once they transferred me back, and I got off the bus or whatever, and they took me in there, I told myself that I wasn't going to be this hard person, go in here and a bunch of fighting. But at this point, what I told myself is I'm about to charge their yard. I'm about to do whatever I can to get as much money, hustle as much as I can on this yard, and whatever happens to me, it happens to me. So I fell back into those ways, and it ended up not going my way because I wasn't on that yard 3 months, and then I ended up in in a segregated housing unit, and this was a specific pod for troubled inmates, and they locked me in there, and I had I got caught uh, messing around with one of the staffs or whatever, having some other stuff going on, and they isolated me, and I'm angry because I didn't feel that I needed to be there, but I became really angry, and I didn't want nobody to stay with me. So anybody that they would move in a room with me, I would, beat them up, whatever. And I told them that I'm not having nobody stay with me. Y'all get me off this yard, whatever. I don't want anybody here. If y'all put them in here, I'm gonna beat them. So they tried it like 3 times. I beat up 3 different guys, and they just wouldn't move anybody else in there. But they told me I wasn't moving either. So I sat in there for felt like an eternity, and I didn't have no television, no games, no nothing. I just had a couple books and a little small Bible that was rotated between doors of the other people next door to me. And they didn't start. They gave me a cup of raisin bran every morning for me to be able to eat, or so I wouldn't get hungry throughout the day. I'll eat like one flake at a time, like chips almost, and that's that would be like that was my part of me because I could not draw down. I could not. There was no access to no food or anything, and then most of the stuff that they bring in there was just it was just not edible. That was the only thing that I really wanted was those raisin friends, and I would just try to make them stretch. So I lost a lot of weight and grew miserable. Did a lot of sleeping, a lot of yelling, just trying to just get some attention. Um, they would give us phone calls once a day. They cost, and I had a list of different phone numbers, family members, friends, different people that I could contact. But I would reach out, and a lot of people would not answer. The first call to a person, you get a 1 minute call for free. But you can only have X amount of people on your call list. But it didn't matter who I had on my call list. I felt like no one wanted to answer. No one wanted to put money on the phone. So at that point, I just felt vacant. And I was really angry. And they ended up moving me from that lockup to another lockup where there was actually a little bit more leniency to where you could come out and like exercise or whatever. And there was other people on the unit that we all went out at the same time, but we could come out, uh, go to their doors and kind of talk to them or whatever, just a little bit of that. But I went through that lockup state for 22 months, and closer towards the end, I'm like, man, something has to give. Like, I feel so much pain. I don't have anybody to talk to. feel like no one cares or write letters, nobody writes back. Like it's just like what is going on in my life? I know I'm not this bad person. I know I'm not like this dark spirit. If somebody just take the time to really get to know me and understand my situation, maybe it will help. But I just didn't have that outlet really to plug into, or I just couldn't find it. So I got out of there, and there was a program that I had been hearing about that had opened up on the yard. It's a program. I think it was called like Freedom Challenge or something like that. And it was biblical based stuff, and it was a unit full of people that were inspired to get in touch with their spiritual side. So you would have to be at a certain level, a security level, to be able to enter the program. And then there was different rules that you had to follow. You had to wake up at a certain time. It was all these different rules just to be a part of it. No one really, people wanted to be there for the sake of being on a different unit and kind of being away from all the negative stuff that happened, because when the yard would get locked down and things would happen, that biblical based program would still be up and thriving. And one of the guards, she had came to me and had told me about it. I'm just like, well, I'd love to get in it. And she was just like, well, once we do your review or whatever, you have your security level go up to where you'll be able to get into it. So if you want to get into it, I have a room available for you. I'll save you a spot, whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess this is what it is. So I got in the program, and yeah, things were good. We praised, we worshipped. It was alive, and I wasn't in that program. I think I want to say about 3 months, 3 to 4 months, and then they had another review on me, and they told me that I was going down security, to back to where I could be free a little bit, So I'm like, yes, like just stay out of trouble. And they told me this early on, but it took them almost 3 months to get me off the yard. So I was really like really fighting it. Like, man, they told me this a while ago, and what's going on? Where's this package supposed to be? What's y'all supposed to be? I'm supposed to get away from her, but God just was holding me there, and so tried to be obedient. I even started to like talk and like intervene and like be something like a leader, like people would listen to and stuff like that. So it was pretty good. I can get more in depth into it how that was. That was a really good experience for me, but I don't want to stretch it. But I ended up leaving from there. I went North Security, which was like a medium, medium minimum almost. Um, it was cool, and I just told myself I was going to take a different approach. I wasn't going to, go back into my old ways. I've already gotten in touch. I've already been doing these devotions, doing different things. I really need to stay intact. And I did, for the most part. It was hard because I was still like, I didn't really have the supporting, I didn't really didn't have the support that I wanted. So, like, as far as income and as far as me eating, and now at this point, I have access to so much more stuff. Like, I could buy like shoes and clothes, and they have like hot food, and I'm wild by everything, but my pockets are still kind of looking funny. I don't really have that support, so I'm just like, maybe I should dibble and dabble a little bit. So I did that and did it for a little bit, and then a scare happened to where some people had gotten in trouble, that that were close to me, and it scared me because I figured I could fall right into that too. Like something was telling me, like, dude, chill, get out of it, back up, sit down. And so I took that happening as a light for me to really sit down, and that's when I really just kind of just fell into my bubble and just started focusing. because at this point I was closer to getting out. I had about 2 years left to do with incarceration. I didn't want to do what I did last time I got to that point and go backwards. So I'm like, I really need to chill. So I did that. I was bagged in for a while, and I did a lot of reading, studying. The only thing that I couldn't let go of was the electronics. I probably on that yard alone, I probably um, got busted with close to 22 phones, I think. Yeah, so it was just like, my nickname was like AT&T. So it's just like you're just gonna keep a phone. But they were a lot cheaper and stuff like that. So the only thing that I would do was a little extra hustling, selling food and stuff like that to kind of maintain that I kept me a device, to be able to communicate because I had started rekindling or started redeveloping those relationships with people, kind of preparing myself upon release. So I felt I needed that, and it really kind of worked in my favor, for the most part. And yeah, that was the ended short story of the 10 years that I was incarcerated.
So, my question, you mentioned that you felt like you were going backwards. So, do you think, looking back on it now, do you think that that was the enemy trying to get you to go backwards? Or do you think that that was God saying, hey, you didn't quite pass this test?
I think a little bit of both, because one thing I do know is my the whole processing of, I always knew who God was. I never not even when I was doing wrong, when I was doing right, whatever, I would always pray. I would always have that relationship, but I didn't want to be hypocritical. So even though I would pray and I would tell him to change me, I never wanted to leave out of my flesh. And I think the enemy did know that, and he knew how to entice me to pull me back into it. And for some reason, I thought I was smarter. Thought that I could outsmart the enemy. I could do things and get away with it, and then still be able to eat my cake too. And I think God allowed me to think that way, just to end up in situations with my back against the wall. Like, yeah, it didn't work, dude. So yeah, it was a little bit of both.
So, after you were released, would you say it was very easy to fall back into the lifestyle you were living before, or was it easy to get right back on track?
I say that it was definitely easy, a little too easy for me to fall back into those same ways, more so because with everything that I was doing early on in my incarceration, I developed a lot of relationships of people that was connected in ways that could have, made me a lot, put me in a somehow better position that I was coming out into, and they wanted to do things to help, but not in a legal format. So it was definitely easy and enticing, but I took a step of faith, and I turned down a lot of people and ended up uh, moving away to a whole new state, a whole new city where I didn't know anybody, just so I could not, because I know that I'm very easily influenced, and I'm getting better at it. I don't want to get the wrong idea, but I knew that I was easily influenced, and I didn't want to place myself in a situation to where I would have to make those decisions. So me pulling away and actually moving away and going somewhere where I didn't know anybody, starting over, just a whole new beginning, it made things just that much more easier for me to be able to walk the straight and narrow.
So you did say you took that leap of faith. So what is stepping out on faith look? How does that look for you?
I think everyone, I think we all know the difference between right and wrong. So sometimes you have to just ask yourself, what's the right thing to do? And regardless, because a lot of my life, you know, I was always looking for the best way to do all the wrong things, regardless if I knew it or regardless if I didn't, I was still trying to find the best way to do it. So, like, to go back to your question as far as stepping out on a leap of faith, to me, I don't, me like moving into the city, coming here, I didn't know what to expect. Oh, I didn't, I wasn't just wealthy. I had saved up a little bit of money, but I didn't have clothes, shoes, hygiene, a car, a house. I don't have anything like coming out of being gone for so long. Everything, stripped, especially going into where I went in at the age of 19, like, and coming out, and here I am 29, it's like I've lost all my 20s, like all the points of time to where a man or a female or whatever an adult is supposed to be growing. Like I missed out on that. So me coming out, I knew that either which way, whether I stayed where I was or I transitioned somewhere else, that for me it was I just had to make that conscious decision. So I guess for me, like stepping out on faith is just not knowing, just trusting the process and trusting yourself, trusting God that things are going to be right as long as you have great intentions.
Okay, so I know that there are a lot of people who are going through something similar or, just trying to get out or not quite sure what to do when it comes to, terms of faith. So what advice would you give them?
I would say this, for me, one of the mistakes that I made, was committing to other people before I actually committed to myself. In some cases that means families, friends, loved ones. Sometimes we take and just because we're hurting or we just been through something, we tend to lean on other people thinking that maybe they could cure the process or make us feel better, from an emotional standpoint. But what we have to realize is that the change is within. It's within ourselves. At some point, your thought process has to change different. You have to know that you're going to be all right with what you have. You have to know that where you're headed, and sometimes just mirror yourself and look at yourself through the mirror. Where am I? Where would I rather be? And what is it going to take for that process to happen? And make those sacrifices. Some of them are hard. Well, I'm still making sacrifices. Some stuff I deal with. I don't feel comfortable making these sacrifices, but I know it's for the betterment of my future. And if a person don't understand that, then maybe they're just not going to be a part of it. And that's one of the things, like I was telling you in one of our prior conversations, like just because you have history with people don't mean that they're a part of your future. Some people are just there temporarily, and you just got to analyze that, and you got to know that, you know, what I'm doing, my purpose in life, my sole purpose, I really, really have to, in some cases break away from, because I honestly think that that's probably the hardest part of this process. It's not even where I'm going. I can map it out. I can see it. I can see the steps. I can take them. I have no problem. I'm not afraid of them or nothing. But the hardest part about it is what I'm willing to leave behind, because I've grown attached to so many things and so many people, and now that I have more of a focused point and I can see it, I'm realizing that I have to break away from these things and these people, and that means, like I say, family, friends, loved ones, and that can be hard for people, but it's a hindrance in our growth sometimes. And people have to appreciate you and appreciate your process. You got to know when to say no. And you got to know when it's green to go ahead and go, and I just encourage you to just really pay attention to the people you listen to, and who you give your time to, because your time is valuable, you know, because, we can, other things you can gain back, but you can't gain that back. So if you're telling yourself there's somewhere you want to be or there's something you're working toward, then you really have to pay attention to that time. And if you're working, obviously there's not too much you can do while you're working, but when you get off work, who do you give that extra time to? And I constantly analyze it, constantly pay attention to it, and constantly take in. Whew, it's hard, man. But man, just really just be self-observant, you know, in many cases, and to bring, Christ into it, we can take and we can look in the mirror and we can see things that, that maybe need to be fixed on our faces and different things. Well, for our life and our soul, like to me, I feel like the Bible is our mirroring process. So if you really want to see what your soul looks like, so or what it should look like, and there should be changes, then you should look at yourself within the Word and actually start to uh, bring in those biblical things because the Bible tells you it's a guidance. It tells you how to live your life and how to obtain the things you want to obtain. You just have to trust the process and you have to walk in that faith. But yeah,
All right. I love it. I'm
does that
realizing
answer it?
now.
I don't want
Yeah.
to like.
So many people, they hold on to loyalty and it keeps them, bound and hindering their future and their progress and growth. And so it's amazing to how you was able to recognize that. So tell me, what do you have planned for the future? Has like God show you any glimpse, revealed anything to you? What is in store for Mr. Daniel Watts?
Well, I definitely can't predict the future, but I can plan for it. So I'll say this. I do have some books I'm working on. One's a kid's book, and then one is an actual like inspirational book. Not a, so that's definitely in my future. But I also plan to, to do some speaking projects. Some leadership projects, speaking and actually motivating other people and actually, helping people to bring the best version of themselves out. Obviously I have some work to do within myself, but I definitely want to, that's my goal, overall, within the next 10 years. And I just want to prepare myself for it to be able to speak and be able to inspire and uplift people and let them know that, you really are great, because God has a purpose for each and every one of us. And sometimes we're blinded. Some people don't have outlets that they can plug in to actually see themselves, the best version of themselves. So just to actually come in and encounter it with someone of my caliber or your caliber as well, to just let them know like what their greatest things are and what it's going to take to get there and help them to be able to make changes and stuff like that. And I plan on writing more books. One in particular, I told you about. I shouldn't speak on it, but I told you about the whole Tupac thing, and I really want to like implement that strategy into our communities and things like that to help people to start thinking, understanding, planning, and actually pursuing their cancels and taking action on all these things through the process. So yeah.
All right, all right. I love it. I love how you're just able to take your testimony and use it to inspire others. And I really appreciate you joining us on this platform today to share your testimony and your story. So thank you, thank you. And I just pray that God just continue to pour into you as you pour into others.
You. I can breathe now.
All right. Well, you all be blessed and know that God loves you.